Hello, today we're in John A. White Park in the city of Atlanta. We're on a piece of the fortifications of Atlanta, defending the railroads of the city. This particular piece of the fortifications was built as part of what was called the Extended Line in August of 1864. And it was occupied by Manigault's South Carolina Brigade of Anderson's division of S.D. Lee's Army Corps, Confederate. This particular line of works faces, I'm pointing right now north. This is facing northwest at this northeast at this particular moment at an angle, and then as it curves around it faces northwest. We're at the salient fort, which is also called a redoubt. In this particular location, behind us were 4 pieces of artillery that were aimed north. 2 guns aiming at Beecher Road, where they could fire at an angle at the U.S. 14th Army Corps, and 2 guns aiming directly north at Logan's 15th Army Corps. All are part of the Battle of Utoy Creek, which the purpose of that was to break the railroads between Atlanta and East Point. Manigault's South Carolina Brigade was here for almost 30 days. During the war, they had cut all the trees down. They used the trees to shore up the trenches to hold up the dirt, so that if a shell struck the trench and pushed it back, the wood would hold the trenches in place. It's really a precursor to World War I trench warfare, and it began first right here in America, the beginning of trench warfare. What's really interesting here is Manigault's brigade, in General Manigault's memoirs, he writes about an underground, they called it a dugout, but it was a dugout position under the trench where they could where he had a headquarters, a small room dugout where he and his men could be sheltered from the artillery bombardment. This right here, there's a strange structure here with some stones that I believe is the remains of some sort of place where the powder would have been kept, and they would have put some sort of structure over the top of it to keep the powder dry, and of course if a shell exploded so it would be protected from artillery fire. It's an interesting place. Again, the trenches are approximately, even today, almost 3-4 feet deep, and they would have been 6 feet deep during the Civil War. It's a commanding hill. The hill was never directly assaulted because directly at the bottom of the hill is North Utoy Creek. So a force would have had to cross North Utoy Creek and come up a commanding hill to make an assault. I believe this part of the line was never directly assaulted, although there were skirmishers at some distance away. Again, the 15th Army Corps is here, and it's also the juncture point right above us where the 14th Corps and the 15th Corps meet as part of Sherman's siege of Atlanta.
So after the Federals crossed Utoy Creek, they came up upon these works?
They came up and demonstrated against these works and found them to be very formidable, and they would be difficult to dislodge the enemy from or force them from, and at a great cost of life. So they were not interested in pushing through. Now Sherman had first had an interest after the Battle of Ezra Church. He mentioned to both General Howard, the new commander of the Army of the Tennessee. Again, Union armies are named for rivers, so the Army of the Tennessee was the Union Army, previously commanded by McPherson and by Sherman and by Grant. It was at Vicksburg. But the Army of the Tennessee was immediately north of here. They had been attacked at the Battle of Ezra Church by these troops here, who attempted to storm their entrenched position that was more of a flat ground, and they had a better chance of success, but they were unable to do it. At the time, they didn't realize the technology the Federals possessed. The Federals they were facing at the 15th Army Corps had the 13-shot Henry rifle, which gave them 13 times the firepower that the attacking force had at Ezra Church. Here, these soldiers carried a single-shot infield that could fire 700 feet to a mile maximum distance with some range. At points like this, high points on the ground, each division had been equipped with 4 or 5 soldiers would have been equipped with a Whitworth rifle that had a very long barrel and a scope that was very effective, and they could actually hit targets over a mile away. This extended line does protect the railroads at East Point. It begins up at, it's called the extended line. It begins really at Fort D, which is a famous fort on the grounds of Morehouse College, and it traveled at an angle southwest of Atlanta.
Okay,
through.
so this line would have been here at the beginning of the Battle of Atlanta, not just necessarily for Utoy Creek.
No, it was only begun. It was only begun after the Federals began coming around the west side of Atlanta as a response to Federal activity to this side. Once the Battle of Ezra Church occurred, this line was being built. In the movie Gone with the Wind, it is depicted. It was captured, this information by Margaret Mitchell. Margaret Mitchell talks about the boys from her farm who were being marched off by the Confederate soldiers in Gone with the Wind downtown Atlanta. And she says, "Big John, you know, boys, where are you guys going?" They said, "Oh, we're going to do our part for the Confederacy. We're going to dig the ditch for the soldiers to fight in." So this is the kind of thing that was dug. This may have been dug by slave labor at the beginning of August, part of it, but most of it was dug by the soldiers and improved. These guys were here a long time, for 3 to 4 weeks.